As members of Congress, we have been entrusted with the duty to protect and improve constituents' quality of life, their health, and overall well-being. And as members of this committee, we have a unique opportunity to examine and put forth real solutions that advance our nation's energy independence while ensuring a healthier future for our children and grandchildren. Today, we have convened to discuss 17 bills, all of which are partisan, none of which Energy and Commerce Committee Democrats were consulted about. Welcome to the Republican rodeo, ladies and gentlemen, and this ain't my first rodeo. I've been in the minority in the House of Representatives once before, and here we go again. The bills being discussed today are an attack on the environmental and public interest laws that are most essential to ensuring that our constituents can breathe clean air and drink clean water. These bills will not serve the American people. They are intended to serve fossil fuel companies who continue to see record-shattering profits while everyday Americans pay higher prices at home. Today's hearing is indicative of my Republican colleagues' misplaced priorities and their willingness to sacrifice the health, the safety of the American people, starting with frontline communities like the one that I represent. My district and too many communities across our nation know all too well the challenges of environmental injustices. In 2020, my district was impacted by a methane gas leak, a leak we later found out had been occurring for over 3 years before the actual community found out that it was going on right in their midst. In my district, residents already breathe some of California's most polluted air, and a chemical disaster can be a death sentence to vulnerable communities like the one that I represent. There are far too many communities across the country that were sent here to help protect and to make sure that their quality of life is secured, but yet with some of these bills, they're really focused mostly on what industry prefers rather than what the American people truly do deserve. My first question is for Mr. Garcia. Can you elaborate on the implications of proposals that hinder efforts from the EPA's risk management program and what would happen if they became law?
Absolutely. So EPA's risk management program essentially calls on refineries to be able to present safer alternatives or to try to study safer alternatives to their methods of production. And so it's a huge problem because the bill that we're seeing today would essentially exempt, again, a loophole from the Clean Air Act to refineries using hydrofluoric acid, which is incredibly dangerous for communities that live near the refineries and that really depend on the air around the refineries themselves. And so this is something that is very much common sense. In fact, much of the industry is already doing it. The fact that we're talking about a bill that would eliminate this is sort of puzzling because large refineries are doing it. And again, it's common sense. It's the idea that you should study to see if there are safer and effective ways to go about the business that you've already been doing for quite some time.
Thank you. And what would accountability look like for communities facing chemical disasters, particularly those that are low-income communities across the country?
Well, you know, on the foremost, we have to make sure that we've seen disasters before. I mean, a couple of years ago, the plant in Philadelphia exploded and was a national disaster because of this same kind of lax enforcement of laws. So what we really need to focus on is making sure that it doesn't repeat itself. And particularly for communities of color and low income and those that live near those refineries, we need to make sure that the planning is done right and that it's reoccurring. We can't just pretend that a facility that is there and that's exempted from the Clean Air Act is certainly gonna be responsible enough to do its job. It has to be held in check, and that's why those laws exist.
One of the reasons why I ran for office many years ago was to make sure that I'm a voice for the community that I grew up in. And I grew up in one of the most impacted communities in all of Los Angeles or Southern California, with more dump sites and plants around my home than most people would ever want to have to deal with. In your testimony, you explained that under the bill that amends the Solid Waste Disposal Act, facilities could operate before securing a permit?
That's right. That's right. It essentially allows industry to roll out the red carpet, march in, do everything that it wants to do before we even know whether the practice is going to be safe, whether the appropriate precautions are being taken, whether the community alternatives, those projects that the community is actually bringing forward to accomplish the same goal are being considered, all of that gets done through those laws, and somehow it's not going to matter. And then it's like this, right? And then once it's operational, we get the excuse that, well, it's already there, so we can't draw it back. So it's like pouring like food coloring in a cup of water.
Thank you.
Good luck getting that out.
Mr. Chairman, I just want to note that I think the clock was backwards on my,
It was.
so did it actually start at,
Yeah, you got 5 minutes and 44 seconds as of right now.
but I noticed that it was going up rather than going down then?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
They didn't reset it, but you weren't
Okay.
shorted on